compared to the first book, when you're writing and researching the secret game, and you're dealing with people who you're trying to find people who are still alive or people who have knowledge of these events that you can tap into and call upon and just do your own research to try and discover things through the archives. Very different in terms of how you approach writing Playing with Teeth, because you lived through everything in real time. So whether it was the stuff you talked about in the course of that 2013 to 2016 sequence, or what happened in Dundee with the team meeting, or the Desert T20, or the match against Sri Lanka, you're living through all these things in real time. But I'm curious, is there anything along the course of these things that through subsequent interviews or other research that you came across that was the most incredible nugget or piece of insight that you were able to obtain that the average person who is on the outside would never have been able to appreciate because they didn't experience it firsthand themselves?
That is a really good question. I think that the thing that struck me most that hadn't at the time was the fact that this wasn't a smooth road. When you speak to a sports team or coach or to players after a game or whatever it will be, you get a summary. You get a summary of what has happened.
Not just that, it's often very sanitized. Very,
yes, yeah. That's the word. That's a good word. You get a very sanitized story of where we are. But the players and indeed Grant were really, really open about the challenges that they faced here, because of course it's not just, it's something like this, a major change. It's not just about hey, we woke up one morning and we decided, hey, let's be braver, and so then we did, and look what happened.
You watched the Disney movie, you watched Brave, you got inspired by the Kelly MacDonald character with her Scottish accent,
and it was, let's do this,
be brave, let's be brave, like the daughter and trying to get her mama bear to transform back into a real mama through the magic spell being broken.
But it was the insights from the players in the challenges that they were faced, because Grant came in, and same before with that, the little anecdote about the England game, he was looking to ask questions, and he's looking to get players to ask questions of themselves all the time. I used as one example of that Carl Kutzer at the 2015 World Cup. Carl went in with a really good ODI record, and then Scotland are playing England. Okay, World Cup stage, absolutely massive occasion. Kyle said he wanted to, he'd had some run-ins with Jimmy Anderson over the years and wanted to take him down, he said. So he said he was really went for it, was really, he said, quite surprised himself by some of the shots he was playing. In the end, gets out for 71, coming off the field, thinking, yeah, okay, job done. I'm quite happy with that. As Scotland are chasing 300 and whatever. He said to be met by Grant, who said, not bawling and shouting in any way, but basically gave him a telling off and said, you've effectively thrown your wicket away. If you got yourself up to a century playing low risk cricket, we were in a position where we could have chased that game. We could have won that game. And he said, and it just lit a little light in his head, Kyle, and said, for the first time, he really started to get what Grant was meaning. And it was all about his own mindset, his own expectation. Did he really believe, and did the team really believe that they could beat England that day? And of course they went in saying all the right things, as they always do. We're going to give them a really good game. Yeah, we feel we've got a chance. And this was an England team, of course, at that stage, there for the taking. They'd just been absolutely hammered by Australia and New Zealand and the English press. So they were really, really there for the taking if they were ever going to be.
And we're going to, in a few days' time, also lose to Bangladesh.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. But in the end, they'd won pretty comfortably. And Kyle said it was almost like, did we really, really believe that we could beat them? And he said, and it was like a little switch was flicked. And then, talking of Bangladesh, Scotland then play Bangladesh, and what does Carl do? Plays possibly his greatest innings in a Scotland shirt, 156, still the highest record or the high score by an associate player at a World Cup. Absolutely transformative performance that then inspired so many other people. Callum MacLeod saying, watching that innings, it was like, whoa, that's the bar. That's where I need to be. That's where we all need to be if we're going to compete against full members. And so it was this whole idea of significant contributions versus winning performances. That 71 was a significant contribution, you could say. But what would it have been had Kyle really gone for it in the way that he did against Bangladesh, really taken the game to England and turning it into what could have been a winning performance? And it's these sorts of little insights that were absolutely fascinating. Callum MacLeod was also very open too, because he had a terrific tournament in 2014. He'd scored what's still Scotland's highest ODI score against Canada, 175. He'd been absolutely imperious, along with Preston Watson, in taking Scotland to victory in that tournament. But then he'd had a pretty horrible World Cup, and that had carried on to the World T20, where he'd only played one innings and it got run out for one or two or something. And so he was in a tough run of form, and Callum said, look, it was something that I hadn't really experienced before, and it was a really tough time for me. And he said anyway that he was brought up from Durham. He'd just been dropped by Durham from the Red Bull side, and was then brought up to play a couple of ODIs that Scotland had against Afghanistan. And then when he got there, Grant had said, actually, no, I'm not going to play you. You can go back to Durham again. And they'd ended up having as Callum described it, a heated exchange, where he said that Grant really laid out the law. You're happy with 20s and 30s. You're not looking to put your hand up. And he said, in my first reaction was of anger, because I hadn't been spoken to in that way by, no one at Durham had said that. No one at Scotland had said that to me before. But he said, I went away and I thought about it, and he was right. And, I really questioned myself. And I had been happy just by putting in a significant contribution, if you like, 30 runs, and thinking my job was done. And then that was the key to Callum then. He came back up later in the summer, scored hundreds and against UAE and Hong Kong, I think, were here then too. And that was transformative as far as Callum was concerned. So it was that I found really interesting, that the challenges, the behind the scenes challenges that the players were presented with, they and Grant didn't have it all easy all the time. But then again, if you want something worthwhile like that, if something is fundamentally transformative as that, well, it's not going to be easy.